It was a quiet morning, and I was still in bed. I was sick and tired from the trip to see my family in California. The kids were in school, and I was in no mood for communication or anything else that morning. As I lay in bed, my phone exploded with text messages from my newest neighbor. We had already had several discussions that were clearly showing that we did not see eye to eye. One would think that our conflict was over something crucial like property lines, or even safety related like the speed we drive down the shared driveway. Nope. Of all things this interruption in my morning was about, it was my cat. You see, the previous owner of the property allowed my tomcat Barry free range of the property because he discouraged critters from trying to live on it. This newest neighbor seemed to understand that my cat, my Barry, was, to be frank, an asshole. This was something my neighbor was okay with until they decided to also have two small cats. No introductions, no work on building relationships between my asshole cat and their two new kittens, so you can imagine the issues that were happening. Barry did not want to share his land with new cats. Hell no. After several discussions over text messages, where do you think we were? Resolution? Nope. Misunderstanding? Possibly. Conflict? Damn skippy. I was sick and I reminded my neighbor of this and nicely asked for an opportunity to address the issue after I was feeling better over coffee. I suggested we meet face to face and resolve our difference of opinions as adults. I was promptly told that texting was the only way she would accept communication. That is when her communication became even more negative and accusatory. So, after discussing the problem at hand with my husband, I blocked my neighbor. That is right. I see her house from my house. I could have marched over to her door and demanded that she work it out with me face to face. I could have attempted to communicate to her in the form of communication she was more comfortable with on our position on the cat situation. I could have explained all the things we had done to curtail the issue ourselves and how the current issue could have been avoided. But given the situation and the elevated level of emotions that my neighbor was exhibiting in text form, I questioned the effectiveness of any of that. As a communications major, all of this was considered. That is why I reached out to my husband for counsel. So, why am I even talking about this? Great question. It is now 2022, and the number of changes in technology when it comes to communication is huge. It seems like everyone has a cell phone, a laptop, tablet, and countless other devices that can communicate with others in the world in a flash. But has this improved our society's ability to communicate? Has it brought strength to our ability to handle conflict as humans? What other skills have been impacted by technology and using technology as our primary means of communication? All great questions to investigate. Let us find something to visualize in hopes to have a better understanding of communication. I want you to close your eyes and imagine what you see when I say a tree is only as strong as its roots. Go ahead. I'll wait. So, I picture a large oak tree with branches reaching out for sunlight, full of leaves, evidence of earthy roots providing a strong foundation. But why am I now talking about trees and roots? To connect in this world, all rely on the ability to communicate effectively. Our society, our ability to resolve conflict, our ability to make connections in this world, all rely on the ability to effectively communicate. So while we may be able to communicate more quickly and to more people, it does not mean that we are being effective in our communication or able to truly communicate what we mean. Much like the roots of an oak tree, the tree would fail to thrive, fail to weather a storm, and fail to exist without strong roots. So, it could be argued that life, relationships, mental health, and even society all depend on effective communication as its roots to be able to flourish. Where do we encounter the need to communicate effectively in our lives? Let us start with the basics. We communicate with our family, at school, work, with our community, and interact with others in society. I think the best question would be to ask, when do we not communicate? So, to better understand what I'm talking about, let us look at some studies together. Here is some data about communication in the workplace found on Project.co's website that conducted studies and found the following. 65% of businesses primarily use email to communicate with their clients as opposed to other tools, 16%, phone calls, 9%, and face-to-face at only 5%. 39% of businesses primarily use email for communication between coworkers compared to other tools at 28%, face-to-face at 23%, and phone calls only at 2%. So, what do all these numbers mean? In the workforce, as a country, we depend on technology-based communication. More importantly, the type of communication is dominantly in written form. If you were to Google what percentage of communication is nonverbal, you will find what I did. Many studies, articles, and references point to the work of researcher Albert Mehrabian and his formula regarding communication of 55-38-7. This formula asserts that only 7% of communication is from words, and 55% is from nonverbal aspects, and 38% is vocal. Nonverbal communication, eye contact, facial expressions, body language, hand gestures, appearance, and much more. However, vocals are more about the tone, the pace of the conversation, the volume, and terms like and pauses. You will also find more current studies that do agree with this to a point. Study after study confirm that the words themselves are only a small piece of communication. So, when we depend solely on written communication, we lack the components that truly resonate with what we are trying to communicate. How do we know this? Well, one study found that 92% of people have had to repeat a piece of information to 2 or more people within an organization. Also, 85% of people find it annoying to have to repeat information when working with other businesses. And 96% of people think the businesses they deal with could improve when it comes to communication and project management. So even though 89% of people believe that effective communication is extremely important, 8 out of 10 people rate their own business communication as either average or poor. I do not know about you, but hearing stats like this speaks volumes to me. We continue to depend on written communication even though it is clearly something we're unhappy with. We're clearly unhappy with the results. So this is just looking at communication and how it affects the workplace. Let us switch to another area of communication where communication matters. Marriage. I personally am married. However, this is my second marriage. My first marriage ended in divorce. My own divorce had a lengthy list of reasons it ended, but I can tell you that communication was in the top 5 reasons. If you were to Google today about current divorce rates, the common number referred to is 50%. However, Jessica Schrader in Do Half of All Marriages Really End in Divorce on the psychologytoday.com website suggested that 1 in 4 marriages are likely to end in divorce. And this is not across the board. A second or a third marriage could mean a 75% chance of getting divorced or higher. 75%. So while couples are not divorcing at the rate that we thought they were, it is nonetheless still happening. And additionally, communication is part of that problem as well. So let's look into that. Shelley Warren, life coach, wrote in 10 Most Common Reasons for Divorce on Marriage.com, stated that communication was the number 3 reason for divorce. This is not factoring in how many of the other reasons that were tied to communication to one degree or another. Number 1 was infidelity or extramarital affairs. And how much of that could be related to communication issues? Connection issues from the lack of communication and conflict issues. The number 2 reason for divorce was trouble with finances. Wouldn't you agree that key components of this are also communication and conflict issues? Moving on from number 4 is constant arguing. So is this not related to communication? The 6th reason for divorce is unrealistic expectations. The 7th was lack of intimacy, and finally the 10th was abuse. While the other reasons do not have as much connection with communication, it could be argued that communication was nonetheless still involved in the problem. Marriages are clearly impacted by spouses' ability to communicate. We did not even consider the impacts of these spouses' communication on how it affects others in their lives, like their children. What skills are their children learning from their own parents? What skills do their children use as they grow up and also as adults? I gotta tell you, diving into communication problems like this is much like falling into a rabbit hole, so to speak. The ability to communicate effectively and the ability to resolve conflicts are skills that need to be learned and practiced. How many times have you been misunderstood in a text message, email, or another form of technology-based communication? What kind of skills are we practicing or not practicing when we are so dependent on technology to share our thoughts? So, circling back to my asshole cat and the conflict with my neighbor, we are talking again to a point, but do we talk about my asshole cat, Barry? That would be a no. Are we good friends? That too would be a firm no. Our cats are still, well, cats, and still do not like each other. However, instead of being angry at the situation and my neighbor, I've come to terms with the fact that We do not see eye to eye. We do not have the same level of communication skills. And although I may have a better understanding of the need for clear communication, my neighbor does not. My neighbor, by appearance, does not know how to effectively communicate or handle conflict. And until she is ready, our ability to effectively communicate will not happen. So where do we go from here? That is a good question. Communication to me is a complex beast with many factors to consider, which is one of the reasons why I find it so fascinating as a topic. I don't have the answers, but I, like all humans, depend on communication and strive to improve my own communication skills and those of the people that I'm involved with. I will consider whether the message I'm trying to give needs more than what only written communication can provide. I can also utilize other means of technology-based communication whenever possible, such as a phone conversation, an actual phone conversation, even applications such as Zoom. We've got lots of options. So, in conclusion, I ask you, how strong are your roots?